Playing video games have been some of the most productive times in my life. Okay, little bit of an over-exaggeration there, but it is true that ever since I have been a kid, I've always pretty much played video games. One of my earliest memories was playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with my older brother, and pretty much most of my teenage years, if I wasn't playing sports or going out hanging with friends, I was stuck inside getting into a video game of some kind, whether that be Metal Gear Solid, Legend of Zelda, all the classic video games. I was a massive gamer, is what I'm trying to say. Then there was a time when I had to go to film school, and because me and my brother went half and half on all of our video games, I essentially couldn't take the PlayStation to uni because it kind of made sense to stay at home. Therefore, I gave myself a 6-month video game detox, and every single day I went from playing 8-10 hours a day, slowly bringing it down hour by hour, half an hour by half an hour. And I literally remember playing one video game. I think it was Dead Space 2, if you were curious. And I got to a point in the game and I just thought, you know what? I don't really have a desire to play video games anymore. And I put the controller down and I literally didn't touch a video game for many, many years from that point. Because I thought, hey, I'm so lucky to have found this thing that I really enjoy, which was filmmaking, and knowing that I love this. I love watching films, consuming them, and the fact that I could have a career doing that for a living. What the hell? That sounds amazing to do it as a career. So I didn't want to screw up the opportunity because I would be wasting time playing video games, and that would basically take up most of my life versus actually, consuming more filmmaking content, learning about techniques and getting better with cameras, etc., giving me the best opportunity to actually land a job in the industry. I was able to sustain this for a pretty long time. I didn't really feel the pull of wanting to play video games when I was at uni. I was just so busy with the new friends and all the stuff that I was learning, being in a completely new environment, having my own place. I was renting it, but having my own room. I was always sharing my room back at home. So everything was new and exciting. However, when I was getting into my third year during the summer break, I just felt this pull of wanting to start playing video games. It just felt like this part of my life had been so important to my whole experience of being lost in a universe and being fully immersed into a world that has been built by another artist or artists, usually Japanese artists, Hideo Kojima, thinking of you. And I remember going back home that time and The Last of Us had been out for maybe like a year or so. And I literally booted it up on the PlayStation and spent 1 or 2 days playing through the whole campaign. And that was literally the first video game that I'd played for 3 or 4 years at that point. I felt like it sort of nurtured some part of myself, my inner child or whatever you want to call it, where I just felt, okay, this was such a good experience to go through this story, this amazing video game story, and to experience it and to be a part of the actual story. Because in video games, you play the character, right? Versus a movie where you're just very passive and watching the thing just happen. I just felt, oh, okay, this has sort of filled me up in a way, in an odd way, like filled up my creative fulfillment and consuming something that actually has inspired me and made me think more about life and storytelling and everything. And that was kind of the first little seed of, maybe I've actually lost something by giving up this once very important hobby in my life. And when I graduated from university, again, I didn't really play a lot of video games. I went back to knocking on doors in the film industry, trying to land work, trying to just make a living off being a freelance filmmaker. As time went on, we hit the period of the Rona, the pesky virus. And at that point, this niggling feeling of like, every single night that I'm tired and it's in the evening, I think sitting on my computer and working for another hour or two, pushing through my I'm exhausted and I want to rest vibe was the exact thing I needed to be successful and to make sure that I was getting ahead of all the other filmmakers out there and all the other content creators who were pushing to be successful. Like, I couldn't just sit and play video games because I'd be behind them and I wouldn't be as good, and then they'd be ahead of me and they'd be rich and successful, and then I'd just be like, oh. So this was my belief system at the time. However, that niggling feeling of there's a part of me that is missing, there's a part of my childhood that I've kind of just thrown away to some degree, just kept coming back, things like just general anxiety creeping up that I used to have a lot when I was younger, coming back up into my adulthood, and I was just like, what is going on? I decided to bite the bullet and buy a Nintendo Switch with Animal Crossing, and got Legend of Zelda, which is a game series that I've been playing for as long as I can remember, literally bringing in Legend of Zelda coloring books and stuff into school. And I finally started to feel like, the thing that I was actually afraid of was getting drawn back into this hobby to the point where it would become unhealthy, like I was doing when I was a teenager. Sure, you could argue that, you know, playing video games for 8 hours a day when you're younger is actually not a big deal because you're just young and that's what you do. You just waste time. Apparently not now. Everybody's is a business entrepreneur, TikToker when they're in their teenage years. But back then, like, everybody just went home from school and we played video games and did sports, and that was, you know, that was life. And I was probably really scared that I wouldn't be able to control this urge to like thrust into these worlds for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I was scared that I would basically get to the same point where I would buy this video game console and then 8 hours of my life every single day would just disappear like that because I couldn't control my urge to just play video games all the time. I actually realized that I'd trained my ability unconsciously to have a really amazing relationship with video games, to the point where I initially got the Nintendo Switch and did play it for a little bit, a couple hours a day, I would say, just because of the newness of this gaming console that I hadn't owned in many, many years. But eventually got to a point where video games just became a reward for my good work. I could contextualize that playing video games and getting lost in these worlds and having this hobby that technically doesn't improve my life actually does improve my life. Because what I would find is that instead of trying to work until, you know, midnight and then go to sleep, I would try and work until 9 or 10, and then I would say, okay, I need to get this edit done, I need to do this project or this task on this project, and if I do it, my reward can be playing Legend of Zelda. And having that reward system connected to my work actually made me not waste as much time on work, made me more focused, and made the goal more enjoyable to achieve, because there was a reward system at the end, which wasn't like do more work. Like the reward system was basically, you can do that task and then that means you can get started on the next task you need to do. Yay, great reward system. Like, that's not a good reward system to motivate me long term to actually find doing productive stuff enjoyable. And I think this is quite a common thing to think, that when you're a kid, like, oh, I had this hobby that I used to have, like maybe it's like a super nerdy hobby like Warhammer, or Henry Cavill loves Warhammer, so he's an adult and he loves it, but he's someone who hasn't thrown away his interest. He hasn't thrown away a thing that he was very nerdy about and kind of gives him that nostalgia of being a kid.
I've been involved in the Warhammer world since I was probably 10.
Nice.
Yeah, so a long time.
Yeah, the smell of paint in the kitchen. Tell me though.
Literally brings back sense memories.
Because he's been able to still be successful and just find a balance of like when he works and when he falls into enjoying a hobby and basically playing and being all nostalgic. And I think you can totally do both as long as you find the balance. And if you kind of know that you really like something or enjoy something, or you have goals that improve you as a person, your hobby can just be defined as something that relaxes you out, nurtures you as a person, and this can actually find a really nice place to slot into your life. So it genuinely benefits everything. And I think that's what I've realized in general about productivity and, you know, being an adult, is that everything talks to everything. So if you think, oh, I need to work for hours and hours and hours, the stuff that you've been neglecting, like socializing, hobbies, are all gonna slowly start to affect you in a negative way and actually make you way less productive than the guy who has some sort of balance. I know there's some times when, you know, you have a project and balance is kind of not possible because you have a really specific deadline or whatever. Okay, I get it. In those periods of time, you kind of do need to focus a little bit. But there should still be some space, like reading before you go to bed, or having like half an hour of having time to go in a bath to relax before you sleep. Like, if your day is so packed that you literally can't give yourself any time to just calm the body and the mind, then you really need to start to reflect on what your life is looking like, and maybe, you know, set boundaries with your boss, or realize that you shouldn't be saying yes to that project in the future because you're getting so worked and the expectation of how much work is expected of you is ridiculous and basically is making you elevate all your anxiety and all the other mental health problems that rise to the surface from just not being balanced. So I guess this video is kind of, in a way, calling out my younger self, but also calling out you too. Think about things that you used to have as a kid that you've neglected, or hobbies or things that you found enjoyable, and how can you actually bring them to adulthood now? How can you integrate them into your life in a healthy way that actually benefits your productivity on the day-to-day, because you can relax, you can chill, you feel that excitement, that nostalgic excitement about that new game that's coming out, or, you know, card collecting, or whatever nerdy thing you're into. You'll just start to actually connect with the child version of you that found, you know, waking up on Christmas Day and seeing a Game Boy there and that being the most exciting time in your life. And you can recapture that, and in a way that actually makes you just feel a bit more human and makes you remember what defined you as a person. I don't think I would have been a filmmaker if I wasn't into video games when I was younger. I'll be honest. I don't think I would have been interested in video, storytelling, all of these mediums if from the age of 5 I wasn't consuming basically stories and world building and being immersed into them. And I can't throw that away and pretend that it didn't define who I am and my personality. And the more I tried to throw it away, the more other things in my mental health started to come up. Stuff that that was like dark and didn't want to be there. And only by, you know, nurturing elements of my childhood, I'm starting to feel more of a balance than I've ever felt. And yeah, there are maybe some days here or there when I'm wasting time playing video games all day, like particularly if I go home to see my family. I can spend a whole day playing Mario Kart, kicking everybody's ass. But otherwise, I feel a pretty decent balance of video game to productivity ratio. So find a hobby that was in your childhood that you can potentially try to bring back into your adulthood. Find how you can create it as a reward system for your good day's work or good night's work, depending on if you're a night owl or a morning person. And then test, how do you feel over like a week or two? Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? You just feel like super guilty. I remember I just started to feel really guilty when I got back into video games, playing them, wasting an hour or two. I'm like, an hour or two? I could be watching a YouTube video learning about this new tech filmmaking thing. But that is literally just your mind being so used to trying to optimize for everything that when you're not optimizing by playing a video game, you feel like you're wasting time, or it's wrong, or you know, you're falling behind. But I've probably said this many times on this channel, life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You need to be able to sustain your mental health, sustain your happiness, sustain your enjoyment in the craft that you're doing as a creative person. And that way, with patience, with time, with compound interest of just doing the thing and learning the thing, you'll actually genuinely feel happy and you'll be a well-rounded person and not this kind of weird work weirdo. Like everything has to be about work. No, you need to have interests of different varieties so that you can actually connect with people in different ways and have more to say than just how cool this new microphone is. The capsule's amazing. Be a broader person, have more knowledge, have more to say, and you'll be able to connect with way more people that way. If you like more casual, candid videos like this, I did another one recently where I talk about the struggles of trying to make friends in adulthood, which is a bit vulnerable, but I actually think a lot of you will be able to relate to some of the struggles that I've experienced in the world of making friends as a grown man. Thank you all so much for watching and all of your support on this channel so far, and I will see you in the next video.